Hey guys, so I made this video earlier that I took down. It was basically I was talking about the games industry and how to kind of start as an artist and what positions make sense and what the upsides and the downsides are of stuff. And I think I just lost track of what I was talking about and was just rambling on and on and. I don't think it was that useful in the end because it just was missing the point. So I took it down and I'm gonna making this one now, and I'll make it a lot shorter and I think more useful. I'll do my best. So I have a timer. I'm checking my timer. I'm gonna stay under the 20-minute mark. Fingers crossed. So basically, what happened is. Some people have asked me, this happens once in a while, someone asks me, hey, I'm just starting off, I like 3D stuff, but I don't know anything about the industry, or I think I know about the industry, but I don't really know, like I've never worked in the games industry, or I've never really collaborated or anything like that. I just want to know what it's like and what I should do to get a job and if it's something for me and stuff like that. So first things first, there's a large amount of different places and environments in the games industry that you could work, and there's a lot of different ways that you could work in the games industry. You have very big companies, very small companies, and then all of those companies are in their own right different in how they treat their employees, and one of the variables there is the actual product they're making. So it's very difficult to say this is what it's like. What I think I can say with some certainty is that if it's very small studios, like below 50 people, then you're going to have a lot more creative freedom, but you're probably also going to have a lot more responsibility. You're going to have to be a lot more versatile. So maybe as a character artist, you're also going to have to make props, and you're also going to have to maybe you won't have concept art, so you have to figure stuff out yourself. And as an animator, maybe you'll have to rig and skin and stuff like that in a small studio. Big studios, there's a lot more division. So in big studios, you might have in the concept art department a prop concept artist, an environment concept artist, a character concept artist, stuff like that. And that goes across the board for all kind of fields, including programming, art, design, stuff like that. So the main categories that you could go in the games industry are management, of course. Then you have art. Then you have design, and then you have code or programming. I'm not a coder or a programmer, so my lingo when it comes to that area is probably a little bit cringy to people who actually know what they're talking about with code. So I'm just gonna dump it all into one chunk of code and programming. So then within those individual categories, you have subdivisions as well. So I'm a 3D character artist, and as a 3D character artist, I model 3D characters, and sometimes have to design them a little bit myself if there's no concept. In my case, that has ranged from very realistic characters to very stylized and cartoony characters for super high-end production and super low-end productions. So depending on the kind of project, the work will be different. If it's a very high-end graphical project where stuff is supposed to look super realistic, as a character artist, you might end up having to work with scanned actors who did facial performance captures. So, and you get the 3D scans, and then you have to clean up the scans, a lot like how animators have to clean up mocap and create the animations based on the motion capture data that they have. So in that kind of scenario, the work is kind of technical and oftentimes devoid of creativity, or you have to find your creative freedom, in these kind of small slices where you can get them. And it's not always bad, because it means that it's less overwhelming. Like if you have because you have anchor points. So if your actors are scanned, then you don't really have to come up with your own shapes and your own. You have a starting point. You can build on that, and in some cases that means that you use the scan and then you just add specific kind of features and details. You make the nose a little bit bigger and that sort of stuff. And some artists really like working like that. I've worked like that, and personally, I can see the joy in it. So I can see how I can have fun with that. But overall, I think in the end it's a little bit draining, And the biggest problem that I have with it is that it's less challenging as an artist. So you're not training your creative ability as much. So, but the 6-minute mark, so I'll try to compress. Okay, so so within the art category, you have also environment artist, just 3D generalist, which you could do a bit of everything. And if you're kind of a 3D generalist, so you like doing characters and you like making props and animation, props and environment props and stuff like that, then you are probably better off finding a place in smaller studios, because very big studios, they have those very specific subdivisions, and often the departments are kind of they're kind of isolated. So even though they have to collaborate with each other, it's sometimes very tricky for an environment artist who's ambitious about being a character artist to then transition to that within that studio where you have those strong divisions. So that's something I've seen and experienced, where it can be difficult if you're in that situation. So I want to make a note on animation, because I think it's important that there's a lot of people who are passionate about animation and who want to pursue their career in this industry as an animator. And I'm not an animator, but I've worked with a lot of animators, and I think I would like to say that it's very difficult to be a successful animator in this industry, because there's simply so many animators. There's just such a large amount of people who are graduating as animators from animation schools, and there's large amounts of people who come from the film industry, a lot of people that get laid off in the masses, so large numbers of animators lose their jobs when an animation studio goes down, because animation studios and also game studios, they utilize large amounts of animators. So for some fields like character art, a game studio may only need 1 to maybe 5 character artists, but they will need potentially 20 to 30 to 50 or sometimes more animators. And again, that depends on the scale of the studio or the size of the studio, and also the kind of the product. But that means when a studio like that closes, then all of a sudden there's a large amount of animators looking for work. And so I think by default, animators do make up the largest pool of people looking for a job. So you're competing with that. And that's, I think, the biggest point. So I think it's also not, in terms of pay grade, animators, I think because there's such a large competition, you become kind of replaceable. And so I just wouldn't recommend it. But if you're passionate about being an animator and that's the thing you want to do, that's what you have to do. That, there's no doubt about that. So environment art, I think, is really a great kind of field to get into now, because specifically because of software like Substance Designer and Substance Painter that are available now, along with, of course, with ZBrush and stuff like that. It's just a really great time to be an environment artist, and also a non-organic 3D artist. So someone who makes props and hard surface objects in 3D. I think it's just a really great time to do that kind of work, because the tools that are available are really fantastic compared to where you were 10 years ago. So I think there's probably a lot of work as an environment artist, but I think as an environment artist, it is a little bit tricky to specialize. And I also think you have to be, constantly up to date with the software. And there's a lot of stuff that you cannot get away with. So because things are static a lot of the times, the assets so the assets don't move and they don't deform. You have to make sure that everything is perfect. So your normals, your normal maps, all that stuff. So you have to have some kind of technical ability and technical drive to want stuff to really be correct and perfect and all that stuff. With character art, unfortunately, a lot of the times stuff will automatically break anyway because it's getting deformed, it's getting stretched out, all that kind of stuff. And then what happens is oftentimes, and I speak for myself here, character artists can get a little bit sloppy because it doesn't matter that much. The stuff is moving on the screen anyway. So that's something that as character artists you have to be aware of as well, and try to fight that. So so that's 3D art, and I think 3D art is still quite a good field to get yourself into the industry, because there's a lot of studios, there's a lot of vendors, studios that do work for other studios that always need 3D artists, good 3D artists, and 3D art is one of those jobs that you can really rely on your portfolio, and you can kind of build your portfolio independently. Whereas an animator, you need assets to animate, and you need those assets need to be rigged and skinned, and so you're relying on the quality of someone else's work. But as a character artist, you can build your character and your portfolio yourself, and it's presenting you however good you are through your portfolio. So that's an advantage there. Then there's another field where you're a VFX particle artist, and I personally think that's also a really great field to get into the industry with, because it's it's one of those fields that a lot of people in the industry don't really know how it really works, or how to achieve it, how to create great particle effects, ability effects, and all that stuff. And so it's a great thing to specialize in and to get a job in the industry with. I do think that as an FX artist, you have to be very social, so you have to be very communicative, and you have to almost work a little bit like a concept artist. Concept artist has to present ideas to the art director, and additional to that, has to give descriptions or communicate to the artists how stuff is supposed to look and how stuff is supposed to come together and be constructed. And a particle artist, in some cases, in my opinion, has to do a similar thing, where the people, like the art director, doesn't necessarily know how to create the particles or how that works. So the particle artist has to basically kind of read the art director's mind and present possibilities, so come up with solutions. And there's so much particle and VFX work in the games industry. There's everywhere you look on screen, you have particles of some sort. The weather, the ability effects, a gun shooting, the smoke coming out of the barrel, all that stuff, those are all VFX. So I think that's a great field to delve into as well, if you're interested in that. Then concept art, I mentioned briefly, I think it's also a good way to get into the industry. The problem I see with concept art is that there's also a lot of concept artists, and it's a very easy step to take. So you don't need to learn a lot of software. So it's seemingly easy to become a concept artist, because there's just not a big hurdle to get over to call yourself a concept artist. However, I think there's a lot of people out there presenting themselves as concept artists and working as concept artists, but they're not necessarily very good. I think there's a small group of people, which is still a large group in the bigger picture, that are actually really good concept artists out there and working in the industry. And those people, they make a very decent living. And there's studios where concept artists are some of the highest paid developers, but that is because they're part of that 1% of all concept artists, that they're just really good at their craft. They understand the craft and they know how to deliver what the customer needs, meaning what the art director needs and what the artists need. So it's a tricky one. I think it's very difficult to become a good concept artist, but I think it is easy to start off as a concept artist, and it's probably also easy to kind of start working as a concept artist. So I think that if you're very interested in doing 2D work and you're interested in communicating your ideas and finding ways to communicate effectively, because that's very important as a concept artist. If you're a complete introvert, you don't like talking to people, you don't like redoing your work, meaning the art director says we need a train station from the 1800s and it needs to be kind of unique and stylized. You need to be okay with presenting something that you think is great, and for the art director then to say like, no, this is not at all what I want, to redo it, and then going through that process 5 times. Hopefully not 5 times, because you start understanding the art director and you ask the right questions. So if you don't like that kind of stuff, then you're gonna have a difficult time in companies working as a concept artist. So I guess I want to wrap this up a little bit and maybe make a second part where I talk a little bit more about, if you decide to become a 3D artist, specifically, I'll talk specifically about 3D character art, because that's what I am, and I don't want to talk bullshit. So then, if you decide to do that, what is kind of the path that, or the possible paths you can take to ultimately get a break and get your first job in the industry, or what kind of jobs you can get as a character artist, and how they vary from place to place. So I think I can do a second part to this video. If you're interested in that, or if you're interested in something else like that, just leave a comment, and then depending on that, I'll make a second part to this video. So I think I'll leave it at that, and I think I'm at 17 minutes. The other video was at like 1 hour and 10 minutes or something. So I think this is better. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.